Greetings. Today we're going to discuss the third type of verbs, which is the infinitive and infinitive phrases. Just to remind you that verbs are words that look like verbs, but act like something like nouns, adjectives, or adverbs. In the other videos, we discussed that participle phrases function as adjectives, gerunds and gerund phrases function as nouns. In this video, we're going to discuss that infinitives and infinitive phrases function as nouns, adjectives, as well as adverbs. And so the objective of this lesson is that you'll be able to identify and properly use infinitives and infinitive phrases in your writing. So there are three types of verbs. We've discussed the gerunds, the participles, and for this video we're going to discuss the infinitives. And we said earlier that gerunds and gerund phrases function as nouns, and participles and participle phrases function as adjectives. So, what are infinitives? Simply put, infinitives consist of two words. It starts with to, and the second word is the simplest form of the verb. So, to hold is an infinitive. The first word is to, and the second word is the simplest form of the verb. To raise is an infinitive. The first word is to, and the second word is the simplest form of the verb. So, how can we differentiate between a preposition and an infinitive? If we look at the first example, after working so hard, he wanted to rest. Now if you look at the to here, which is followed by another word. Now if this word is a verb, then this is an infinitive and not a prepositional phrase. The second example, however, our trip to China was filled with surprises. Again, to is there, but in this time it's followed by a noun and not a verb. So this phrase here is a prepositional phrase, and to here is a preposition, and so this is not the same as the first example. In the third example, Banks's gift to me was too extravagant. Again, the word to followed by pronoun makes it a prepositional phrase and not an infinitive. The fourth example, when do you plan to graduate? In this example, to is followed by a verb, and so this is an infinitive. The last example, on Vicky's way to town, she had a flat tire. Again, to, but this time it's followed by a noun, so this is a prepositional phrase. Now, what do infinitives function as? Infinitives function as nouns, they can function as adjectives, and they can function as adverbs. And that's why it's really problematic to identify the function of the infinitive, because the function is very elusive depending on the position in the sentence. Students especially find it difficult to differentiate between its function as an adverb or a noun and specific as a direct object. And infinitives are the only thing in English language that can function as nouns, adjectives, and adverbs. Infinitives are never verbs in a sentence. They look like verbs, the form is a verb, that's why they're called verbals, but they don't function as verbs in the sentence. So we're going to start with the first function of infinitives, which is infinitives as nouns. And typically nouns have 5 jobs in a sentence. They can be subjects, they can be predicate nominatives, they can be direct objects, indirect objects, and objective prepositions. So if you look at the first example, as a subject, it precedes the verb. To read starts with to, it ends with the verb. So the function here is a subject since it's doing the action. To read is fun. The second example, it follows a linking verb, to win, and renaming ambition, so its function should be a predicate nominative. In the third example, it functions as direct object. If you look at the sentence, I love to read. So when you ask yourself the question, what do you love? And the result of this love is to read. So the function here is a direct object since it's receiving the action of loving. In the fourth example, however, the infinitive functions as the object preposition. So the sentence that says the parachuter was about to jump. Now, if you look at the preposition, that's the preposition, and this is the infinitive. And this infinitive functions as the object of preposition about. Now we're going to discuss infinitives as modifiers, specifically when they function as adjectives and when they function as adverbs. So when infinitives function as adjectives, they answer the question of which, when, or what kind. A typical answer to an adjective. So in the first sentence, the children show the willingness to cooperate. If you look at the infinitive here, to cooperate, and you ask yourself what kind of willingness is that? What kind of willingness is that? Then the answer should be a willingness to cooperate, modifying willingness. So this one functions as an adjective modifying the noun just before it. You will know that it's an adjective since it ensues a noun. So whenever you see a noun before it, it's most probably an adjective, but not always an adjective. In the second example, the time is to start is now. Again, if you look at the infinitive, and this is preceded by a noun, and you ask yourself the question of which type of time is that? It's the time to start. So in this case, to start modifies time, and the function is again an adjective. Note that you never include the verb in the phrase, because phrases never include any verbs. So, more examples on infinitives as adjectives. Derek has the ability to succeed in business. Now, the infinitive is to succeed, and if you look at the word before it, it defines what kind of ability it is. So it's modifying ability, and the function is an adjective. Note that we haven't discussed the infinitive phrase that includes these modifiers. We're going to discuss it later in the video. But you have to know that the infinitive can function as adjective modifying a noun just before it. The second example, the man to hire, is that applicant in the dog classes. Again, to hire is the infinitive, and this gives you the which man is that, is the man to hire, and the function is an adjective. The third example, my desire to travel has taken me all over the world. Again, to travel modifies the word just before it, and the function is an adjective. We've seen that infinitives can function as nouns, that they can function as adjectives, Then we're going to look at the infinitives as they function as adverbs. Of course, adverbs answer the questions of why, when, where, how, and to what extent. So the sentence says they fought to win, answers the question of the reason they fought, why did they fight, so they fought to win. It's an adverb. Notice that it ensues a verb, modifying that verb, but it can also be placed far away from the verb in the sentence, unlike the adjectives. The second sentence, some people are unable to adjust. Again, the infinitive to adjust. And then it gives you the manner of how they are unable to. Okay? So, in this case, it's modifying the adjective, which is in this case the predicate adjective, and the function is an adverb. More examples of infinitives as adverbs. The first sentence, the contract was written to provide the rights and laws you must know. Again, the infinitive is to provide, and it modifies the reason it was written. So it modifies the passive form of the verb was written, and the function is an adverb. Again, note that we are not discussing the phrases yet. We are only discussing the infinitives as adjectives, nouns, and adverbs. We're going to discuss this infinitive phrase later in the video. The second example, the zoo is fun to visit in the morning. Again, the infinitive is this, to visit, and modifies what manner of fun it is. So defines fun, which is a predicate adjective, and the function is an adverb. We're going to go straight ahead to the last example. Editors are trained to find grammatical errors, so the infinitive is to find, and it modifies the verb are trained, which is the passive form of train. So the function is an adverb, modifying the passive form of the verb are trained. Now we discussed the infinitives. We're going to discuss now what to include in the infinitive phrases. What actually the infinitive phrase include? If you look at the example, to describe the hockey game in an understandable manner required gestures, it starts with the infinitive to describe, followed by all its complements and modifiers. So I have to include the hockey game and follow it by the prepositional phrase in an understandable manner, because it functions as a modifier. So the whole thing, to describe until manner, should be part of the infinitive phrase. So typically an infinitive can be expanded into phrase by adding an adverb, like the first example, Jeff's entire family likes to rise early. So I added here an adverb. Or to skate on the ice without falling was not too easy for him. So the phrase is to skate on ice without falling. Here I added two prepositional phrases to the phrase itself. So they are embedded phrases within the same phrase. I can also add a direct object that receives the action of the infinitive. So the first example, he hated to discuss emotions. I include to discuss, followed by a direct object that receives the action of discussing. So this is the object of the infinitive. You don't have to know how to label it by now, but you have to know that this is a direct object of the verbal. And so the second example, they promised to show us their slides. Again, here, if you look at the infinitive, and what receives the action of showing is slides. So slides is the object of the verbal, and we show these slides to us. So us is an indirect object. So we include all the indirect object, the adjectives that modifies the object, and the object itself. So the phrase should include all these items to show us the slides. The third example, I would like her to determine her own goals. Again, to determine is followed by adjectives, her, own, and of course the direct object that follows the verbal. And so the infinitive phrase becomes to determine her own goals as part of the whole phrase. It's important to note that many grammatical rules can change through time. So if you look at this example, to completely finish my work was paramount. And if you look at the infinitive phrase that includes to and the verb including the adverb, if you notice that this adverb comes between the infinitive and the verb itself. Now earlier the inclusion of the adverb between to and the verb itself was an error. Nowadays it's permissible. Back in my days, we were corrected this as an error, and we had to rephrase it as to completed to finish my work was paramount, or to finish completely my work was paramount, or to finish my work completely was paramount. We were never given the luxury of including the adverb between to and the verb, but nowadays it's permissible to use this between to and the verb. So if you use it between to and the verb, it's okay. It's not an error anymore, and you will not be accounted for this inclusion of the adverb.